Hey, John. Hi.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Community Development Committee, July 2022. We're going to start by taking roll.
Dan Hansen,
Here.
Jerry Van Someren,
Here.
Ryan Shirley,
Here.
Scott Counter,
Here.
Dick Hesselink,
Here.
Sean Anderson.
Here.
Regarding the minutes from our last meeting, does anybody have any additions or corrections? Seeing none, we'll let them stand as approved. Are there any public comments? Would anybody from the public like to speak on any matter which is on or off the agenda? Any member of the public like to speak? Anything on or off the agenda? Mr. Peavy.
Good evening or afternoon. I'm Bill Peavy. I live at 2530 County Road N, Woodville. First time I'm doing, I said this last time, I'm sure I apologize if my voice fails or if I have to stop and take a big breath. I had severe COVID last fall and I have not gotten my lungs back to normal yet. I live next to the railroad right away on a Century Farm. My wife's grandfather started in 1914. We are not newcomers and been only there a few years. In fact, my wife remembers the train going by, chasing the cows off the tracks before the train came by and waving to engineers. First point, I'd like to support the ban on hunting on the trail. It's only 66 feet wide in spots, 99 feet in others. It's not safe to shoot off to the sides, because you only got 30 feet or 50 feet, and shooting straight ahead is not safe. That's where all the walkers are. So I support banning hunting on the trail. I'm also here again this evening to voice my and other property owners against the disgusting and threatening letter that everybody along the Wildwood Trail received. We call it the railroad right-of-way, not the Wildwood Trail. It's been over a month since I was here last, and only one of my concerns, the hunting, has been addressed. 25 property owners living along the trail met last night at the Old Galilee Town Hall. We came up with a series of questions that I'm going to set forth, and I realize you can't answer any of these because this is public comment, but we'll start out. Question was, why was this letter sent out now? If the idea was to stir up a hornet's nest, it sure worked. Why were existing crossings blocked with a log? And they're still blocked, a few of them, according to the members that were there last night. These people have deeded crossings from 1892 or 82. They were blocked. They've been used many years without any question. Why isn't the county doing its legal obligation to keep the fence up? The deed from 1882 says the owner shall erect and maintain a sufficient fence. Doesn't say when it is, regardless of day or night. My cattle don't respect that. It's your working hours. And the county refuses to come out. In their email they sent me, anytime but 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. And then last but not least, why is the county trying to deny access and threatening fines? I have that email. For those that have used the trail to access fields and fix the county's fence for multiple decades, even ignoring legal rights. At last night's meeting, I reviewed at least 5 deeds that all say the same thing. The railroad agent purchased a right-of-way for railroad purposes, not the land or the timber on it. Most of the other property owners will be getting their deeds from the Registry of Deeds office this remaining week. We were also all made aware that one property has started legal process to clarify title. So what happens next? Property owners will continue to use the right-of-way as they have for 25, 50, and in my family's case, 75 years. I hope the Parks Department staff knows their legal rights about detaining or arresting a person on the trail. It may be too late, but maybe a meeting of property owners and park staff to address concerns and exchange information might be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Are there any other members of the public who would like to make public comment? And one last time, anybody else for public comment? This time, we're going into a public hearing. The first will be a rezone of 1.38 acres from C3 commercial zoning to R1 residential zoning district. We have a staff report.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and committee members. The first item on your agenda tonight is a public hearing for a rezoning application by Mr. Richard Kiesel, located in the town of Baldwin at 2508 US Highway 12. We will be using Chapter 15.545 of the zoning ordinance to process and review the rezoning request. First, a little bit of background. The location map, you see the parcels outlined in blue, located in the town of Baldwin, just north of and adjacent to the village limits of Woodville and just west of County D. And this process this picture best illustrates the request before you tonight. So the area you see outlined in blue is currently zoned C3 commercial zoning. And on that parcel, we have the Hilltop Bar and Restaurant. We have 2 accessory buildings at the point of my cursor. And then we do have a detached residential dwelling on the very east side of the C3 property. Just to the west of that, Mr. Kiesel also owns a 4-acre parcel zoned R1. And the request before the committee tonight is regarding the area you see outlined in green, which is about 1.38 acres. The applicant desires to rezone that property from C3 to R1. And what that would essentially do is separate one accessory structure and the residential dwelling and move it onto the parcel zoned R1. So the R1 parcel would include, if the rezoning is approved, the parcel identified in green. And then the remnant C3 zone parcel would still contain the Hilltop Bar and Restaurant, along with one of the larger accessory buildings. This next map just shows the topography of the property. There is a break at the top of the hill, roughly dissecting the 2 parcels. Drainage, half of it flows to the south and east and half of it to the west. And this next shot is just a Google Street View of the subject parcel. You see the bar and restaurant in the foreground. You see the larger accessory building in the background here, the smaller accessory building that would go along with the residential dwelling. A little bit of background on the property. The subject parcels identified in blue. We just looked at some of the surrounding zoning. We have ag zoning to the north in green and to the west in blue, the ag 2. Again, the adjacent parcels R1 residential. And then we have a smaller parcel that's zoned industrial that currently is mining a small amount of gravel and is facilitating some construction parts on the site. And then the village limits of Woodville is just to the south. When we review rezoning, staff reviews the rezoning to make sure it is consistent with the local government's comprehensive plan, which is a state statute requirement. We first take a look at the town of Baldwin comprehensive plan. The subject property is circled in blue at the tip of the white arrow. And you can see, based on the town's land use designation and their comprehensive plan, that the area is guided for future commercial, along with some rural residential just to the east of the commercial. The town of Baldwin's land use districts do support commercial development in this area. And then with the mixed rural designation in the comp plan, it does support residential development lots with some hobby farms. Next, we take a look at the St. Croix County Future Land Use Plan, and we have somewhat similar designations. Again, the parcels would be circled in blue at the tip of the white arrow. And like the town plan, the county plan shows commercial in the area where the Hilltop Restaurant is. And then just to the east of that, everything that you see in green is designated agriculture. However, based in the county's land use plan, we do support residential dwelling units in the agricultural area. Next, we take a look at some of the natural resource features. Again, the highlighted parcel in blue is the subject parcel. The parcel does not contain any sensitive areas, scenic and rec areas, or environmental corridors, nor does it contain any shoreland, wetland, or floodplain limitations. This next map shows potential sand and gravel deposits based on soil reports, as well as the possibility of it being productive farmland. The town of Baldwin did review this rezoning request at their June 2022 meeting, and they did recommend approval of the rezoning request. The next 6 items you see on the slide just point out different land use objectives and policies that would support the rezoning request. The important one being under number 6, development of the property shall comply with Chapter 12 sanitary, Chapter 13 land division, and Chapter 15 zoning ordinance. The applicant will have to file a CSM pending approval of the rezoning request. Some of the applicable criteria that the Community Development Committee will look at tonight. The committee shall only recommend approval of the rezoning subject to the proposed use being consistent with the county comp plan, the natural resource management plan, the zoning ordinance. Continuing to number 4, that the town does not disapprove the rezoning request, which is the case here. The rezoning and proposed use is consistent with surrounding districts and does not result in spot zoning. And the rezoning and proposed use is consistent with surrounding areas. So the 3 options before the committee tonight is to recommend approval, recommend disapproval, or table the zoning amendment for additional information. Based on staff review of the request in the rezoning application, staff would recommend approval of the rezoning from C3 to R1. Based on the technical review findings in the report, items 1 through 6. Number 2, that the town of Baldwin and St. Croix County comp plans include future land use maps that support the change to an R1 zoning classification. Number 3, that the town board has recommended approval and that the proposed use is consistent with and can comply with Chapter 15. As of tonight, the county staff has not received any public comments as a result of the published notice as well as the mailed notices out for the hearing. This concludes the staff overview of the request.
Thank you, John. Do we have any members of the public who would like to speak in favor of this rezoning? Do we have any members of the public who would like to speak against this rezoning? That being the case, I will end the public hearing on this rezoning. And I will open a public hearing on our next rezoning and ask for our staff report on this.
Good evening. Mr. Chair, committee members, staff, and public here this evening. Your next item is involves a road setback reduction waiver request. And I will note this request is from Conrad Jopru. Involves property at 2184 60th Street. This is this is legally described as Lot 36 Shadow Pines First Edition in the town of Somerset. It's in an R2 zone district, and the waiver ordinance, land division ordinance provision that the waiver request involves is from Chapter 13, 13.10B1 is the specific provision. And I'll note included with your materials are the staff report that I'm running through right now, the application submitted by Mr. Jopru, and some meeting minutes from the town of Somerset that indicate their recommendations both for this setback reduction waiver and also an accompanying variance request that Mr. Jopru had submitted for consideration by the Board of Adjustment. I'm not going to read through verbatim this slide. This is, those of you who have served on this committee have seen this before, but it basically discusses why the setback waivers are required. In a nutshell, prior to 2006, there was county had a 100-foot setback requirement, and that was shown on plats, and so to basically a determination was made that there wasn't a need for a greater than 50-foot setback from a road right away, essentially a front yard setback, and but to change an existing situation, which is what we're dealing with here. There's a requirement that a setback waiver be granted by Community Development Committee, and as part of the process, if it is granted, that the applicant has to have a correction instrument prepared by a registered land surveyor, and that essentially changes for that lot the setback requirement from 100 to 50 feet. Just an overview of the request. Under provisions of the Land Division Ordinance, the applicant's request is to reduce the structure setback on Lot 36 in Shadow Pines First Edition from 100 feet to the current zoning ordinance setback standard of 50 feet along 60th Street. Now, I would note that this is an after-the-fact request. Mr. Jopru has already constructed an accessory building which is substantially complete, although not entirely complete. I'll note that the plat in question was recorded with the Register of Deeds in March 2002, and it does include the 100-foot building setback requirement, and hence the need to allow the building to stay where it is to deal with this setback waiver request. I would note again that a correction instrument prepared by a registered land surveyor is required to be recorded at the Register of Deeds office, noting the removal of the existing structure setback as shown on the recorded plat, again assuming the committee sees fit to approve this request. This is just a image of a portion of the plat, and this dotted line would represent the 100-foot setback. And I would note on Lot 36 on this drawing that from First of all, 60th is centered in the road right-of-way. And also, I just call out to your attention that there is a drainage easement sort of in the central part of Lot 36 running south into Lot 37, which Mr. Jopru also owns. And that does affect somewhat his choice in terms of where to place the building. This is an aerial image of it, and these properties were formerly part of a tree farm, and you can see the extensive vegetation. They're past the time you would harvest them, and in terms of for sale as as landscape trees. The location of Mr. Jopru's building, a 36 by 72 foot building, is noted on here, and essentially I would note that one end of the building, the south end, the closest corner to the right-of-way is at 53 feet. The northeast corner is approximately 48 feet. Again, the applicant constructed a 36-foot by 72-foot accessory building on the property. The building was constructed prior to obtaining a building permit from the town of Somerset. Mr. Jopru is having to reconcile that issue with the town of Somerset. I would just tell you that before they resolve that, they want him to do what he needs to do to get compliant with zoning requirements, hence the reason for this application and his accompanying variance application. The applicant has stated he wasn't aware of the 100-foot setback on the plat. The applicant constructed the accessory building in a location non-compliance with the 50-foot setback either. The building is slightly skewed, so again, one end of it's exceeding the 50 feet and the other end is just short. After review with county staff, the applicant submitted these applications. We've actually been talking with Mr. Jopru for probably about a year, but since last year for certain, through the summer and fall. Just so you understand what was constructed, this is the building that was built. You can see 60th Street running along here, and the view to the south, these trees would be on Lot 37, which is actually also owned by Mr. Jopru. And we're looking at the sort of the front street side of the building in the view to the right here. And you're looking from the north, looking south at the building in the other photo. This is the back side of the building, which would be the west side. I would note that the property slopes up a little. There's tree cover, and then it drops down, and Mr. Jopru's sanitary system sits due west of the back of this building. And west beyond that is that drainage easement that I pointed out that was shown on the plat. The construction of the building was started in June 2022 and, 2021. I think we got our date wrong there. And the building's substantially complete, as I indicated, and town's waiting to resolve building code issues until the zoning issues are resolved. The applicant's project was initiated when government operations and public interaction due to COVID were impacted. Not that we weren't interacting with the public, but things were a little different at that time. The applicant claims to have received either incorrect or conflicting information regarding the setback requirement from the 60th Street right-of-way. And, but irregardless, the standard that the building was subject to was 100 feet because it was on the plat, and with the ability to reduce it to 50 with the setback waiver. Various site factors support the siting choice of Mr. Jopru for location of the accessory building. And I would note, just in terms of review, that the town of Somerset discussed this. We included a copy of meeting minutes with the packet materials. Basically, the town board recommended approval of the setback waiver. They asked for a new certified survey map with essentially the setback line to be removed or changed that complies with county requirements. Essentially, the method for doing this is a correction instrument prepared by a registered land surveyor, and often it's more of a text document that's filed that's documenting that the setback instead of 100 would now be the 50-foot requirement that's our standard zoning requirement. I don't want to be too redundant, but I'll note under Section 13.10 B1A that the committee may approve the reduction of a road setback on an approved final plat or certified survey map to that specified in the applicable governing zoning ordinance, again, which would be the 50 feet that's applicable for the R2 zone that Mr. Jopru's property is located in, and subject to a correction instrument, as I've already noted. And there are criteria that says it shall only be allowed in unusual circumstance where a reduction of setback will allow the lot or structure on the lot to be in greater compliance with the objectives and standards of Chapter 15 and would negatively impact the neighborhood. Based on a few factors, including the existing land cover, the trees, existing structures on Mr. Jopru's property, really the impacts are pretty well screened from any abutting properties, with the exception of the agricultural land on the east side of 60th Street. And I would note that the town of Somerset has recommended that Mr. Jopru plant some trees between his building and the 60th Street right-of-way, and I believe that that's something that can best be addressed by the county through the variance proceeding that he's going to be going through with the Board of Adjustment this Thursday. We have included some findings for consideration by the committee, and we're referencing that the reduced structure setback will allow the lot or structures on the lot to be in greater compliance with objectives and standards of Chapter 15. We note that due to existing trees and another accessory structure located on the property, granting of the after-the-fact setback waiver will not negatively impact adjoining property. The reduced structure setback will allow the proposed structure to be located on an appropriate portion of the lot from an access standpoint. If you were able to negotiate some of the obstacles to get further west on Mr. Jopru's property, there would be an extensive amount of trees that would have to be removed to locate a building there, which I would argue from an environmental standpoint, just from an aesthetic standpoint for the neighborhood, would not be the best result. The town of Somerset at a town board meeting recommended approval of the waiver, and we also note that location of the sanitary system and a drainage easement west of the accessory building location limited the potential to locate the accessory structure in conformance with the 100-foot setback requirement stipulated on the plat. We also note that it was part of a tree farm, and there would be aesthetic and loss of habitat if a lot of trees were cut down to locate the building further west on the property. The applicant did consider alternatives, and again, for reasons I've mentioned, location of some of the existing structures he has, his sanitary system, and the drainage easement on the plat, it would be very challenging to locate the building beyond the 100-foot setback. Mr. Jopru has indicated he intends to plant additional trees as recommended by the town of Somerset between the accessory building and 60th Street. And lastly, on findings, because the accessory building location slightly encroaches within 50 feet of the right-of-way to approximately 48 feet at its northeast corner, the applicants also applied to the Board of Adjustment for a setback variance, which will be considered on July 28th. Both approval of the after-the-fact setback waiver and the setback variance must be obtained by Mr. Jopru in order for the accessory structure to remain in its current location. Our staff recommendation is that the Community Development Committee approve this setback reduction to 50 feet from the road right-of-way of 60th Street based on the findings 1 through 9 we've referenced, and also subject to two conditions. One, that the correction instrument is prepared by a registered land surveyor, and that it's filed with the Register of Deeds office within 90 days of approval of the setback waiver. And at that, staff can field any questions. I'll note that Mr. Jopru is here this evening, and if you have any questions for him or if he has anything to add, you may accommodate him.
Very good. At this point, I'd like to ask if anybody here has anything to say in favor of in favor of this. I keep wanting to say rezoning. But
I know.
Right. Setback waiver. Does anybody have anything to say against the setback waiver? Does anybody have any questions for staff? All right, then we'll hold that until we're going to end the public hearing, and we're going to move into our business items, and we're going to take up item number 1, amending the comprehensive zoning ordinance, going into Baldwin. Excuse me, there's an awful lot of words here. Amending the comprehensive zoning ordinance, section 26, township 29 north, range 16 west, township, town of Baldwin. So we've heard the staff report. Does anybody have any questions or discussion concerning that rezoning? We need a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
All right, moved and seconded. Any discussion? Mr. Connor.
I guess the first question with this now, under the R1 zoning for the property, are they going to combine that with the property to the east of it then, so it's a larger parcel instead of the 1.38 acres, or will they maintain the 1.38 acres?
So the parcel you see in red is 4.38 acres. They would be taking the 1.38 acres outlined in green and adding that through a certified survey map process to the R1 parcel. So that would be a 5.76 acre parcel once the CSM is submitted and approved. And then the 10 acre parcel that's currently outlined in blue would be reduced by 1.38 acres. So both lots will still meet the minimum lot size requirements in those respective zoning districts.
If I understand, isn't that a 10 acre minimum?
Yes, it's 1 unit per 10 acres, but we're making it more conforming by adding the 1.38 acres.
Okay, so it would still need then, once this is done, do they still need to get a variance or conditional use? Because
No,
it's not the full 10 acres?
Correct. Our non-conforming use ordinance does allow parcels to become more allowed as long as they become a less non-conforming use. So again, we're adding acreage to a parcel, and this parcel currently exists as a separate lot of record. So as of right now, they could come in and apply for a permit. What we're doing through the rezoning process is adding an additional 1.38 acres to an existing buildable non-conforming lot. So we're making the existing R1 parcel less non-conforming, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And that is allowed through our non-conforming use ordinance provisions.
That's my questions. Thank you.
Very good. Any other questions? All right, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you, John. Moving on, we have a waiver to set back the road, the building setback in Somerset. And do we have a motion?
I make a motion, we acquiesce.
All right. Do we have a second? And we have a second. Now, do we have conversation, questions? Yep, Scott?
So I know that when we get this said and done, that it's a separate, so they're going to be going through a separate process for a variance for the being under the 50-foot for the building itself, if I understand that right. So that'll go in front of the...
That'll go before the Board of Adjustment on this Thursday, July 28th. And basically, we certainly don't prefer these after-the-fact situations, so we're holding Mr. Japaru to the letter of the law. This process is needed to reduce from the 100 that's in the plat to the 50, and then the request for the variance is to allow to within 47, just to allow a little leeway, but we've measured it from the center line of the road, the closest part of the building, at about 48 feet. And so it's approximately 50. It's more than 50 on one end and slightly less on the other. Hence the need for both actions.
Sure. So under something like that, does it typically, that if they ever have loss of the building from fire, wind, or storm or something, that they would not be able to rebuild within the 50-foot right away?
You know, that's a good point. We could reference that when it's discussed by the Board of Adjustment. I think the reality is, if somebody came back and wanted to rebuild, we would advise that they comply with the 50, just because you always have less questions raised in the future by, if you're selling property, title companies, that sort of thing. It's better to comply with the zoning. This is a rather bureaucratic way to accomplish it.
Okay. That's all the questions I have.
Thank you. Any other questions? No, seeing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And all opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you very much, Mike. Moving on, business item number 3, Town of St. Joseph rezoning, 5.88 acres in the rural mixed-use zoning. We're looking to Mike or John. John for a staff report.
The next item on the committee agenda tonight is to consider ratifying and approving a zoning change, a rezoning application in the town of St. Joseph. Specifically, this parcel is 5.88 acres, and the town of St. Joseph desires to have this parcel rezoned from rural mixed-use zoning to the traditional commercial zoning district. And as some of the committee members may know, the town of St. Joseph has their own zoning ordinance separate from St. Croix County. However, state statute requires that even though towns have their own zoning ordinances, the county board must still ratify and approve these zoning changes. So what's coming before you tonight is the action that the town of St. Joseph already took. They conducted the public hearing. They supplied us with the meeting minutes, the public hearing notices that we review to make sure they've met state statute. And I'm just going to forward to the parcel map. So this 5.88 acres is kind of just north of Holton in the town of St. Joseph. It's around the curve of the old Highway 64. At the red tip of the arrow here is the parcel. Currently, the parcel is being used for temporary boat storage. The purpose of the rezoning is to do an expansion of an existing mini storage project that exists just to the north of this site. You also see on this map where the cursor is some additional mini storage that has taken place in this area. Again, as I mentioned, we reviewed the submittal requirements and the submittal information that the town has provided us. We believe that everything has been met in terms of statute. We've been provided minutes, actions of the Plan Commission and the town board, as well as the hearing notice, and staff would recommend approval of the rezoning. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Do we have any questions? Scott?
Sorry, I'm the question guy here, but on this one, the only concerns I guess we have, it is specifically going to be mini storage. Has the township put any conditions on it regarding that under the use that they're going to have, that it's like a conditional use, so that they say in the future if they're rezoning this, that they couldn't create it into something that would be multifamily or things concerning if they, I know that the soils in that area, they have a lot of, the structure and stuff has a lot of drainage that can reach through for the St. Croix, whether they're going to then try to adopt and put in septic systems or stuff. It's not an ideal situation. For mini storage is perfect for what they're trying to do, but it's just a protectionary measure for a conversion for the future if they are doing it as a condition for just that type of use.
I am uncertain what actions or protections the town took. I can tell you, just like under county zoning, once a parcel is zoned a specific district, yes, it does open it up to other potential uses in the future. If, for instance, the mini storage is built and they sell and something else replaces that use in the future, that's not to say that the town couldn't amend their zoning district requirements in the future as well. But no, the action you take tonight would not put any safeguards on that. That'd be more of a town issue. And I'm not sure if they have specific site plan requirements that they would have to come in to meet. But for purposes of the rezoning, what's in your packet tonight and what's on the screen here is what was submitted.
All right, any other questions for John? Do we have a motion for approval?
Make a motion that we approve the resolution.
All right, do we have a second? We have a second. Any conversation, discussion on the motion? Seeing one more, Scott? Very good.
And so as of right now, the township is all okay? They want to see this proceed?
Yes, as a matter of fact, they've asked to have this put on the agenda. So we get the initiative from the town to have this go before the CDC. Yep.
All right, further discussion? Seeing none, let's put it to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up, consideration of amendment to Chapter 30 Parks Ordinance regarding hunting on parks trails. This would be discussion led by Alan and Dennis.
So based on request by our committee chair and discussion he had a little bit with myself and our Parks Administrator, a request that came up last month was to clarify in our Parks Ordinance regarding hunting on the Wildwood Trail, and we think that's a great idea. Very happy to see that change made. And so we have drafted this is a rough draft of the changes. We did it fairly quickly. And we think we caught most of the locations where it would need to be, but for all intents and purposes, basically we would be adding a paragraph. You should see it in here. It's tracked in red. There's a couple of corrections to park names that we also did. I got to get to the right page myself here. All right, so on page 103 of the packet, wait till Julie gets that up there for you all to look at. There. We would add a new number 1, or actually expand number 1, that would say no person may take, catch, kill, hunt, etc. On any trail, park, forest, trail, or recreation area or other area not open to hunting or trapping, including the following. And so we would be adding these sites of our parks that are either trails or very small pieces of property that there would be no hunting allowed. And a couple other small corrections were made here and there, and that's about it. Just trying to make it very clear, very straightforward. A couple other places we had 2 years ago, the committee decided to add a couple of locations where we charge fees, and those are clarified on page 107. So just adding those, and there's a couple of other little corrections that as we've worked on our fee enforcement, we found that it would be appropriate to add a couple changes. At this point, we're keeping it mostly focused on the hunting change, clarifying where there's no hunting allowed, and we would have this go forward to, if this committee tonight votes to go forward and set a public hearing for next month, then we would ask Corp Counsel to review it. It's very short. I'm sure that she could easily get that done before next month. And then there'd be a hearing next month, and it would go to the September County Board. Any questions on that? Okay.
You guys good with that? Any further discussion?
Guess I'm going to open another can of worms. Like to discuss with the members here. One of the concerns that we've been talking with people within my district anyway a little bit is some of the privacy issues. And with the new types of cameras that are out that are being used for hunting purposes, the resolution has become extremely good. And again, it can be, the camera images can easily be transferred to people's telephones, computers, which is all part of the packages with purchasing these new types of trail cams. One of the concerns we have is being that these are in park spaces. You know, we're not talking about private land or anything here. We're talking about parks. And people that use the parks on a regular basis or go through them, I'm not saying that when they enter parkland that they're expecting perfect privacy, but on the other side, if you're sending your kids to school and they're crossing public parklands to get to the school which is one consideration for lands that are around this facility, people are expecting a little bit of privacy where their kids aren't necessarily being watched at certain times of day or things. There's issues that people have with some of that. And for the most part, I don't see hunters that do that. But if we're permitting cameras, we aren't distinguishing between hunters and everybody else. So the question of the day becomes, do we really, how necessary is it now to have cameras that are out in St. Croix County parkland? So I leave that for discussion point.
So do we add a ban on trail cams in St. Croix County parks for hunting? And that's a can of worms. What do you guys think?
What does the current statute say about use of cameras?
Okay.
The current ordinance is the placement or use of trail or game cameras are allowed only in areas open for hunting unless authorized in writing by the property manager. Cameras shall have the owner's DNR, customer identification number, or name and address written in the English language attached to the outside of the camera in a conspicuous location and be kept legible at all times. We don't say how long the camera can be there. We don't say if it could be overnight or for a week. And we don't say how many cameras a person could place out. The concern that I'm hearing Scott say is that a person can be putting cameras out and have them out. Now that we're talking about having hunting on government property and near the government center here, where there's a lot more public use, I think the concern is privacy. With regular folks using the trails, the concern is privacy. Do you want to take pictures of just everybody walking by, and that gets to be a problem. So maybe banning cameras is a legitimate concern. I could probably go along with that. I've never seen the same deer that shows up on the camera when you're hunting. I mean, it's kind of nice to see the deer on the camera, but is it really necessary for hunting?
Are you now allowing stands on that property?
They
Do
allow
they have limitations of when they have to come down, or is it a daily thing? Then just
stands have to come out at the end of the day. You can bring them in, use them, but you have to take them out at the end of the day.
I guess I would suggest doing the same with the cameras. If you can't leave your stand up, take your camera with you.
Well, privacy is becoming a big issue in our world today, and I kind of question too how necessary is a camera. Yes, it's nice to see the pictures about the big one that got away, but maybe we could get along without that. And so, in that case, I probably would be in favor of no cameras.
So I'm hearing the committee say guidance to the staff, let's get rid of the cameras. Anybody have a problem with that?
I for now am going to stick with that for sure. I'm going to do more looking into it, but I believe that as of right now, that's the right option going forward.
So going into the public hearing, I think item number 7, packet page 104, probably the committee would like to see the use of cameras eliminated.
We can make that change, no problem.
Then we would go into scheduling a public meeting. That's the
We'd
next
have to
step.
do the public hearing, a notice. It would require, we'd do this in about a week and a half. Get everything ready, because it has to be published twice before it, in the paper before the next meeting.
And does this, we should have a vote then we need a motion and a vote on the amendment to the ordinance as it's represented here to end hunting, and then we need an amendment to ban trail cams.
You could make that as one motion, because I don't think you have a motion on the floor yet, do you?
No, we don't have a motion at
Yeah.
all, we're just having a conversation.
Right.
I would like to make sure that if, as you do this, that you don't suggest that county staff can't, I hope you're not suggesting that county staff can't occasionally use trail cams. We do use them now because of vandalism. We have them at several of our sites because people vandalize and we try to catch the vandals. So we're not using them for hunting. We just have them for that purpose. We don't buy the good ones. In fact, half the time, the trail cams can't even get the license plate clear enough that we can prosecute someone. So I don't know that that'll be a privacy issue. We're not downloading them. Again, most of our sites, we don't have it set up. We don't have satellite access and all that to have downloaded to our computers and that kind of thing. But I just want to point that out, that staff should be an exception to that. And we'll work with Corp Counsel to see if that needs to be written in there, but I really think that should be the case. We don't also put them, we put them near facilities that can be damaged.
So in the ordinance, placement of use of trail or game cameras for the purpose of hunting will not be allowed. That would be the change. The placement or use of I'm sorry.
I think no placement or trail cams by any member of the public.
Or only as authorized by the park.
Only, yes, exactly.
Yep.
Only as authorized by the park.
That's great. That's great. So we need a motion then, and then we need to include trail cams. So would anybody care to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make the motion to move forward these changes to the ordinance, including the ban of trail cams unless authorized by the parks administrator.
Very good. Do we have a second? Jerry, you
second.
Good. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on, business item number 5, Stanton Farmland Heritage Preservation Ag Enterprise Area Petition. This is great news. Tim Stieber will present. And Max Erickson?
Thank you. We have a petition from Stanton Farmland Heritage Preservation Ag Enterprise Area to be established. The county currently has 3 of these, Troy, AEA, Squaw Lake, AEA, and Town of Rush River, AEA, and this is be our 4th if this was established. See if it's, get down, is it all part of this document? Yeah? Keep going. There we go. Basically, I'll get it to a map. We have a resolution that would be forwarded on to the Board of Supervisors if we would choose to recommend that at this committee. Try to get to the map. For those familiar with the area, there's Deer Park and Star Prairie. Basically, these areas are an agricultural preservation measure that allows landowners to sign up for farmland preservation credits. And then they also, to get that, they have to comply with erosion and nutrient management practices. And generally, it's considered to be a good thing. Max Erickson, of our staff and division, has been working with the town of Stanton to complete their application. And so this is, we haven't had one of these for a couple of years, so we're excited to bring this forward. And our recommendation from staff is to have the committee recommend to the Board of Supervisors to sign the signature resolution supporting this new ag preservation area. And if you had any questions, I could try to answer them or use Max.
Do we have any questions at all? We'll need a, oh, I'm sorry, Scott, you need to yell or throw something or something. Scott, Mr. Counter.
The only question, and this is just to catch me up on this particular question, but how does this compare with the ag enterprise area?
No, this would
This is what
establish
this
a new ag enterprise area. Correct.
Okay, so it
Yes.
is an ag enterprise area.
Yep.
Okay, so with that, they get, isn't there something where on some of the tax credits and stuff that they get double?
They
if
get a
they're
higher
in
level. Yep, it makes
Yep.
it actually worth it for them to be participating in the program. They agree to comply with a set of standards that we have, and then they get a tax credit that helps out at the end of the year.
Tim, is that transferable if the land gets sold?
That's a good question. Next.
Good evening. It does. So, and that's, well, it was, so nothing would change unless you had a contract. The ag enterprise area requires you to sign a contract to get that higher tax credit level. They're optional. You don't have to sign the contract. This area is still in regular farmland preservation, so you can just do it the other way. If there's a contract on the property, it would be tied to the property until the time limit of 15 years has passed, or there's a release cost with that, which could be settled through sale of the property. And that price is the release is dependent upon what DAT cap would set for it, and that would be, it's usually what how valuable the farmland is. Yeah.
So we need a motion recommending this to the county board to approve.
Yes.
Do we have a motion?
I so move.
Second? Mr. Shirley seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you very much. Good work. And before us now, we have consideration of mandated and discretionary services from our Register of Deeds. Beth Pabst.
Good evening. So in your packet, you should have the list of the mandated services by the Register of Deeds Department. All of the things that we do in our department are required by statute. They're all statutory duties. The only thing that we do in our office right now that is not a statutory duty is we do the in-rem property searches that help our county take properties back in lieu of taxes that are delinquent for more than 3 years. So because we have the ability and the knowledge to search title for properties, we do that for the county. It saves the county, I don't even know, several $1,000s. It's probably 100 hours of manpower time that we dedicate to that project just to benefit the county. So we are doing that, and it is not a mandated service. Most counties, probably everybody but us, and maybe one other county in the state of Wisconsin, actually contract those services out. They hire abstractors and title professionals to do the searches for them. So that is a non-mandated service. The majority of what we do, record real estate documents, record vital records. Both of those processes bring funds into the county. My office is a non-levy department, and by that we mean that I cover the expenses from the fees that we take in, and then then the rest of the funds go several thousand, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Ken can probably give you a better figure than I can, that go into the general fund to pay for the expenses of other departments and the expenses of running our county. So nothing we do costs the taxpayer a dime. It's all service revenue generated. I don't have a lot to tell you. We just do what we're supposed to do. Does anybody have any questions? You can certainly stop by our office, kind of check us out, see what we do. We take up a lot of space, got a lot of old things there.
This is a pretty good and thorough report. Does anybody have any conversation or questions or comments, complaints? Beth, thank you for coming.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. We will move on. Mr. Stever, overview of Resource Management Division.
Now on to something really interesting.
That's right.
I find that interesting, but I'm kind of geeky about it. All right. I've got a short slideshow. Basically, I'm just going to talk about what the Resource Management Division does, how we do it, some of the basis behind it, kind of a 5,000 foot level, why we work on what we do, that sort of thing. Currently, our staffing level is as listed here. My position as Resource Management Administrator is known in most counties as a county conservationist. That's the way it's mentioned in statute. Every county is designated to have a lead in their conservation programming, and it's usually termed a county conservationist. We have 2 full-time conservation planners, a half-time technician, that would be Max, which you met, that's shared with the Land Use Division. So we have this position where we're sharing amongst division. And then we have 1 full-time watershed technician that's grant funded, so it's an LTE. And another thing that we have been using the last couple of years is we have 2 contracted individuals who provide very specific work for us that, if you look at it from a dollar and cents, does save us money because they don't require near the resources that we require if we try to hire for those kind of work. And both of them are very experienced. That's Kyle Kulo and Miller, Alicia Miller. Why do we do what we do? Water resource protection is number 1 in our list of things that we work on. And this is important in our county, excuse me, because we have a couple of outstanding resource waters which are kind of hallmark to St. Croix County. We've got the Apple, the Willow, and the Kinney, and then we have this Lake St. Croix as well, and a lot of folks value those resources tremendously. It adds a lot of value to us. And the reason we work to protect water resources in the county, so you know, that's our fundamental thing, is because once water gets polluted, it's really difficult to clean up. So restoration of water is very hard and expensive compared to protection of water. Recreational values that we have in the county rely on good water. If, you know, a lot of the Lake St. Croix, the Kinney trout fishing, the Apple River float trips, all those things rely, there's a tremendous amount of value that's added because we have good water quality in the county. Another challenge for us is that's a map of all the septic systems in the county. There's about 16,000 of them. And each of those has a well that goes along with them for drinking water. And we're tasked with trying to monitor that and protect that as well. And we work with our our planning division closely to monitor the quality of that water. So we're working with planning division on that particular work. We work on agricultural productivity like we just saw with the Farmland Preservation Program, and soil erosion practices and cover crops, things that protect the soil resource that basically agriculture is based on the soil. Everything that we do just about is related to Chapter 92 of the state statutes. That's kind of an establishment set of statutes that directs counties to establish a land and water conservation effort in each county. Ours is known in resource management. Most counties, it's called land and water conservation. More and more they're combining like we are. Every year you hear of one or two that get combined. But basically this was established in 1981 and it has pretty lofty introduction that I put up there declaring soil erosion basically a threat to Wisconsin's health if it were to be degraded, our soil and water resources. And also that it's the state policy to halt and reverse degradation of soil resources and pollution of state waters. So that's pretty wide scope of work, but there's a lot more in Chapter 92, and I do have some handy handouts for afterwards I can hand out that have links that you can look some of this stuff up so you can educate yourself about it. Chapter 92 is really important legislation in Wisconsin. It's important to this committee because this committee serves as a land conservation committee for our county. So everything that I do, I bring to this committee, and so you set the tone for our conservation efforts in this county. And that's one of your duties, and that's outlined in Chapter 92. And also, one thing that really was kind of wise was that in Chapter 92, there's a framework for a planning framework that's outlined in there called the Land and Water Resource Management Planning Framework. And that's ours. That's the Bible that I carry around. And everything that we do is outlined in that plan, and it's a 10-year plan, and it's each county is specified to have developed one of these. And the neat thing about this is that it has to be consistent with your ordinance, it has to be consistent with state rules, and so it considers everything that we have already in place with the county. And it's passed by you guys and the Board of Supervisors. So it's a very important document for my division. It provides the authority for you to employ staff to carry that plan out too. So it kind of saw some of the hurdles that counties would run into as they started to ramp up conservation efforts around the state. Our Land and Water Resource Management Plan is 5 goals. Goal 1 is groundwater related. And I started to prepare some of these accomplishments because we're up for a 5-year review soon. And in 4 years of our 10-year goal, these are some of the accomplishments that we've had. And you've been here for some of these. The manure spill and groundwater response plan was something that we accomplished, I think, a year ago. We've got the groundwater testing program. We're rolling along for 4 years now. We do a lot of nitrate clinics and education about to groundwaters. More than 400 people a year come to those. And we review about 46,000 acres of nutrient management plans every year. So those are some of the things that we're doing for groundwater that are notables in our Goal 1 groundwater protection. And it's kind of interesting because if we're doing it, it's in this plan. We try not to get outside of this plan at all because it's such a large plan and that we really need to stay focused on what's in this plan. Goal 2 is surface water. It's a little bit noisy, but back in 2018, when this plan was adopted by the county for a 10-year period, they set a 20% reduction in the total load of phosphorus into Lake St. Croix. And that turns out to be 26,000 pounds of phosphorus. That means about 2,600 pounds a year has to be reduced. And currently, in the very bottom here, we're on pace to exceed that goal. So these are why we do these 10-year goals, because every year you're just working, and you can't go out there and say, yeah, it's better, because I might be able to look at it and try to convince you like a salesman, but you really can't tell if it's getting better right away. But we are reducing, and we are on track to meet our TMDO goals for the county, which is rewarding. How do we do that? We do it through implementation of practices. Just in the last 4 years, we had 56 of these waterways we've installed 60,000 linear feet. Goal 3 is in there. It's less of a focus, but it's still very important. Basically, we want to protect and restore wildlife habitat while also enhancing some of the natural beauty in the county and recreation. To that effect, in the last 4 years, we've done 5 stream bank restoration projects, over 1,000 square feet or linear feet of stream. This is where the tree program and plant program fits in because we work with landowners, a lot of rural landowners, on tree planting and selection of plants and making those available so that they can do tree planting around the property, and that's a good benefit to the county. We also partner with St. Croix Sportsman's Alliance on a lot of projects, and we could go into a whole list. They're a very supportive partner of ours. And we partner with U.S. Fish and Wildlife on numerous projects in the last few years as well. Getting down there on preservation of ag land, we've got about 27,500 acres in farmland preservation right now that are enrolled. An additional to equal about 46,000 acres of total that we have to manage with the nutrient management program. So a large number of plans come in every year because they're required by permits. But the ones that are in the 27,000 acres of farmland preservation, those have to submit a nutrient management plan review every year. And then we've got the new ag enterprise area that's being formed. Looking backwards over the last 12 years, or since 2012, we've increased in the county no-till acres from 10,000 acres up to 35,900 acres. And we go out every year. Max works on this now. He's the lead for this. And we survey the county every year. And that's why we know that. We have data every year that's in our annual report that you guys get to see. Our last goal for the county, it's in the Land and Water Resource Management Plan, is to something that I think was really showed a lot of foresight by the planners. That basically they wanted to ensure that staff connect with partners because, for example, why should we try to work to cost share everything or try to raise the resources to do everything if there's partners that are doing good things? And there are some good partners, and we work with all of these, USDA agencies, FSA, NRCS. We work with them. We have 2 producer-led councils in the county that we work with, and they bring in resources for cost share, Sportsman's Alliance, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and Kinnikinnick Land Trust. So we've worked with all of those partners in the last 4 years on several different projects. We also run or help to administer, if you will, the Recycling and Hazardous Waste Program in Resource Management Division. It's not in our Land and Water Resource Management Plan, but it's an important duty that I work with Chris Poston on. And that's basically the statute that's listed there, Chapter 59, state statute, outlines what an effective recycling program is. And we have one in the county, and that is basically we work with 26 municipalities to try to help them achieve responsible or a solid recycling program in their areas, whether that be a town or a city. We're more of a supportive role in the grant writing, and also we summarize and collect hauler data and calculate the recycling rates for all these different municipalities, and we give them advice on how they can increase their effectiveness. Do a lot of education, and we organize special events. And one of those is the hazardous waste event, which you all know about. So those are the areas that I work in and day out. So if you have any questions related to that, I would be happy to try to answer.
Yep. We'll start with Scott.
Yeah, question from me again. With the programs, have you ever looked into combining some of the multiple maps where they have certain types of soils versus setbacks from waterways and things, to construct like a hazard map that would be able to be used for the towns and different things. So it would kind of flag things for them so that they understand, hey, if it's in this area, we got to be cautious as to what we deal with.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure we have something to that effect on the online now. Don't we have that, Ellen?
Over the years, we've definitely mapped environmental areas, we've mapped soils that will likely not support private on-site wastewater treatment. The soil survey can be used to identify areas that perhaps cannot handle certain loads for like larger, heavier buildings, that kind of thing. Those kind of resources are available, and we could look at, you've probably seen on our website, we have a lot of very diverse map products that we make specifically from the various types of resources and mapping that we have in order to respond to requests from the public. Honestly, we don't get a lot of requests for that. People don't want to hear that their property isn't as valuable as someone else's because it's not amenable to development. People don't want to hear the bad news. So they usually prefer to ignore it and then come in and buy it and then complain to us about why they can't do what they wanted with it. So, but we'd be happy, very happy to prepare some of those resources, and perhaps we could get more people looking at them. It's a digital age now, and we haven't done things with that for, at least 10 years. So
There are a number of layers in the GIS that are amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Ryan? Ryan, you look like you're dying to ask a question. This is one of those reports that are so good that when I go home, I think of 3 things that I wish I'd asked. I've got one. What would happen if one of the grandkids, now I'm not saying this happened to me, but what would happen if one of the grandkids came home from a garage sale and they had picked up out of a free box an old-fashioned thermometer full of liquid mercury? What would you do with that thermometer?
I would take it to hazardous waste cleanup, but I'd have to put it somewhere safe for the next couple months because they'd want to be playing with it.
Right, and we're lucky that.
But there is some private places you can take it now too. There's a new business in Somerset that has opened up that you can actually access that, and we've sent a lot of people there that are, say, moving and they have too much stuff and they can't wait till the next hazardous waste cleanup, because we've gone from 2 to 1 just due to costs, and 1 just is a long time to wait, 1 per year. So we've sent a lot of people to that company up in Somerset.
Do you have a resource of private companies that will accept
Yeah,
that stuff?
I mean, on our website, Chris works on the website a lot, and she has what's called an A to Z guide that kind of gives clues on where you can send things. And most of the time, if she's on vacation and I take her calls, that's what I go to. I use our own website to answer the questions on the phone.
I actually knew that was there.
It's pretty effective, yeah. She's got an
I saw
excellent, organized website.
Yeah, okay. Thanks very much, Tim.
Yep.
So where did you put the thermometer?
The thermometer is actually wrapped in bubble pack on a shelf in my shop, because the last thing I want to do is have broken vial of mercury evaporating on the garage floor. So I just set it there until I figure out what to do with it. The kid was playing with it. Anyway, never mind. Next up, we have a fabulous financial report by Ken.
I know, it's been a long evening. So on the financial report, I'll just highlight a couple of the things that I'll typically look for in the financial report. And it's really actually less on the expense side, because I think our departments do a really good job staying within their expenses. It's a couple of the revenue items. So in the Register of Deeds, Beth was talking about that she's a non-tax levy entity. She's got that negative tax levy amount. So I look there to see where we're at. So we've collected $212,000. Right here, $563,000 fees for Register of Deeds. We projected we'd hit 925,000 this year. We're a little bit behind last year. We were at 659 last year. So you can see a little bit of a slowing in the recording of fees. But we ended up at 1.3 million last year as a total. So we should still be on track to hit the 925,000 pretty easy this year. We should hit $1 million in fees. So that's one of the things that I'll take a look at when I look at the financial report. Another one then would be parks. Again, I come back and I look at not so much the expense side, but I look at the revenues to see where we're doing at revenues. So we're through June now, so these numbers are the end of June, the early part of summer we're recorded in. We're at 161,000 compared to 219 last year. So we're lagging a little bit from where we were last year. We ended last year at 415. We were projecting 381 this year. So we're probably pretty close, maybe just a little bit behind where we would think we would be at this point in time in the Parks Department. But again, that's what I've taken a look at. If you have any other questions, any other revenue or expense items that jumped out at you, I'd be happy to answer those questions.
Anybody? Where's Judy when you need her? No, it looks pretty good. All right, that wraps up the financial report. Thanks, Ken. I looked real hard and I couldn't find anything, so that. Announcements and correspondence.
I don't believe we have anything other than a reminder about the Farm City Day, and I believe it's August, I want to say August 13th. Yeah, Max is nodding. Thank you, Max. And it is at Zwald, yeah, Bomaz, or Zwald.
Bomaz, right.
In town of Pleasant Valley this year. So I think that is the only event we have coming up. It's that time of year.
Yep, okay. And then how about a request for future agenda items? Anybody? Well, we'll take those as the month goes along. Oh, wait.
I have a couple.
Ryan, okay.
One, I would like, after talking with community development, local community development, they're asking what it would take, whether it's financial or whatever, to have the GIS updated more than once a year. And if what that would look like to us, if that was from a department standpoint. And then the second, if our public comment tonight about the right-of-way in Wildwood Trail, if we have some issues there that we need to figure out, it sounds like there's some issues there. We should have an update on that too.
Thanks, Ryan.
Can I ask, can you explain what you meant by update, have GIS updated more than once per year?
Because right now, from my understanding, it's updated once per year, right?
What?
The property ownership side of.
No, it's updated every month.
Updated monthly. Okay, then never mind.
Oh, okay. If that's what you meant.
I don't know if this is the right question to ask now, but I am getting several complaints of the people who are using Pine Lake Park that the facilities need more often cleaning. One little boy put it this way: I sat down and I got dirty. I think that means we need to pump the bathrooms out.
Yeah, we recently had to increase the pumping at Troy, at Homestead also, because it's being used so heavily. The staff had to go in and shovel. That's pretty bad. So, yeah, we'll take a look at Pine Lake and try to do the same thing. Sorry about that.
Yowzers. Okay, so where are we? Sean?
It looks like we're starting it, but I'd just like to continue the review that was started today with Beth and,
We intend to
Cool.
keep going until we get through all of our program areas. So little bites, little bites. So you betcha. And as always, we're going to entertain any requests or suggestions throughout the course of the month, so.
Did you want that as an agenda item?
No, I don't think so. I think
Oh,
if
that wasn't
know
what you
that,
meant.
that's just, yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah. Agenda items are good suggestions. We can talk about them, so.
We should be cleaner.
Yeah, okay. The date of the next meeting is Tuesday, July, wait. I'm looking at the wrong thing. What's the date of the next meeting? Somebody help me out here.
Thursday, August 18th.
Thursday, August 18th, day of the next meeting. So this one's adjourned. Thanks very much.